History is written by the victors, but in professional wrestling, history is written by the editors. We think we know the golden era. We've memorized the pay-per-views. We can recite the commentary from WrestleMania 3. We know who won, who lost, and who slammed who, because that's what was televised. That's what they wanted you to see. But if you were a fan in the 70s, 80s, or early 90s, you know the truth. You know that television was just a commercial. The real business, the blood, the sweat, and the stories that actually defined the industry didn't happen on Saturday night's main event. They happened in smoky arenas in Poughkeepsie, Omaha, and Albuquerque. They happened on the house show loop. Title changes that were erased, dream matches that were tested and rejected, bitter rivalries that tore the house down every night but were never deemed safe for TV. These are the phantom feuds, the wars that have no footage in the official archives. Welcome to the WrestleVerse. Today, we are digging through the crates and dusting off the memories. We are counting down the top 10 feuds that only happened at house shows. Put on your seatbelt. We're going off the air. Before we ring the bell, we have to understand the landscape. In 2024, if it's not on TV or social media, it didn't happen. But in 1985, TV was arguably the least profitable part of the week for Vince McMahon. The model was simple. You use the TV show to create a star, and then you send that star to 300 cities a year to sell tickets. That's the loop. The house show was the Wild West, and it was where the boys worked out the kinks. It was where they tested if a babyface was getting cheered or if a heel was getting legitimate heat. Sometimes they ran angles just to see if the crowd cared. If they cheered, maybe it goes to WrestleMania. If they sat on their hands, it disappears forever. What we are about to discuss are the experiments. Some were failures, some were hidden gems, and one was so successful it actually scared the company into canceling it. Let's get into it. Number 10. The torch passing. Ultimate Warrior versus Andre the Giant. We start our list with a masterclass in smoke and mirrors. When you think of the Ultimate Warrior, you think of energy, chaos, and, well, let's be honest, limited wrestling ability. When you think of Andre the Giant in 1989, you think of a legend whose body was tragically failing him. So why on earth did the WWF book them against each other for nearly a year across the globe? This feud was a business transaction. Vince McMahon knew Warrior was the next chosen one, but Warrior needed credibility. He needed to slay a dragon. And Andre? Andre was the ultimate professional. Despite being in immense pain, barely able to walk, Andre agreed to travel the loop with Warrior to teach him how to be a champion. But here's the catch. They couldn't have a match. Not really. If you put this on national TV every week, the illusion would shatter. Fans would see Andre's immobility. They would see Warrior's lack of technique. So they created a specific script, performed only for the live crowd. Andre enters. Warrior enters. Warrior shakes the ropes. Andre chops him. Warrior hulks up. Clothesline. Andre gets tied in the ropes, a classic spot to keep him upright without making him bump. Warrior hits the splash. 1, 2, 3, 30 seconds to a minute. Night after night. From London to Los Angeles. The fans in the arena went absolutely bananas. They saw the monster fall. They didn't care about the work rate. They cared about the moment. It was a feud that existed solely to build the Warrior's aura without exposing his weaknesses, and it's a testament to Andre's generosity. It was the passing of the torch that you saw in magazines, but rarely witnessed in motion. Number 9. The beta test. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. The ladder matches. Ask any fan about the first ladder match in WWF history, and they'll probably say Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon at WrestleMania X, and they would be wrong. 2 years prior, in 1992, the concept of a ladder match was alien to the WWF audience. It was a gimmick Stampede Wrestling used, brought to Vince McMahon's attention by Bret the Hitman Hart. Vince was skeptical. He thought it was just a bunch of guys climbing for a paycheck. He didn't get the drama, so Vince did what any promoter would do. He ordered a beta test. He told Bret and Shawn, the two best workers in the company, to take this ladder concept on the road. This is where the magic happened. In places like Portland, Maine, and New Haven, Connecticut, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were creating the blueprint for modern wrestling. They figured out the psychology. How slowly do you climb? How does the ladder fall? When does the crowd gasp? There is one solitary piece of commercial tape of this, released years later on a VHS compilation, but the real evolution of the match happened in the dark. By the time the cameras were ready for a ladder match, Bret Hart stepped aside. He suggested Shawn fight Razor Ramon instead. Why? Legend has it, Bret said, "I'm not dropping off that ladder every night anymore." The WrestleMania Classic stands on the shoulders of these house show experiments. Without the 1992 loop, there is no TLC, no Edge and Christian, no money in the bank. We are just scratching the surface of the iceberg. We have stories coming up about broken ropes, broken promises, and the feud that changed Hulk Hogan's career forever. If you love this kind of deep dive into the golden era, do me a favor. Smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. We are building the ultimate community for old school wrestling fans right here on the WrestleVerse. Don't be a jobber, join the team. Now, back to the Hidden Wars. Number 8. Perfection. Through repetition, Macho Man. Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon, Steamboat. It is widely considered the greatest wrestling match of all time. WrestleMania III, Savage versus Steamboat, was a symphony of athleticism, drama, and false finishes. But if you think they just walked out there and improvised that masterpiece, you don't know Randy Savage. The Macho Man was notoriously obsessive. He didn't like calling matches in the ring. He wanted everything planned. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. For months leading up to WrestleMania III, Savage and Steamboat wrestled each other all over the country. But they weren't just wrestling, they were rehearsing. Imagine going to a house show in late 1986. You see Savage and Steamboat go 15 minutes. It's incredible, but then 2 weeks later, you see them again in a different city, and they add a new sequence. They were building the match piece by piece, like a Lego set. Steamboat later revealed that Savage would quiz him in the car or at the hotel. Number 14? What is spot number 14? And Steamboat had to know it was the arm drag into a pin. The house show loop was their rehearsal stage. The fans in those arenas were watching the rough drafts of history. They were the test audience for the Mona Lisa. By the time they got to the Silverdome, they could have wrestled that match blindfolded. And in a way, that makes the house show versions even more special. They were the raw, unpolished gems that led to the diamond. Number 7. The War of the Paint. The Legion of Doom versus Demolition. If you grew up reading the aftermags in the late 80s, this was the only thing you talked about. The Road Warriors versus Demolition. The originals versus the clones. It was the ultimate dream match. When the Legion of Doom finally arrived in the WWF in 1990, we thought we were going to get World War III on television, but on TV, we got a watered-down version. By late 1990, Demolition member Axe was having health issues, and he was being phased out for Crush. The chemistry was off. The spark wasn't quite there on Superstars of Wrestling. However, if you bought a ticket to the house shows, you saw the war. On the loop, Axe was still active. We got brutal 6-man tag team matches, often involving the Ultimate Warrior teaming with LOD. These matches were stiff. They were ugly. They were exactly what they needed to be. In arenas like the Rosemont Horizon, Hawk and Animal tore into Demolition with a ferocity that TV sponsors might have frowned upon. While the TV product was trying to sell you on Demolition Crush, the live crowds were witnessing the last stand of the original Demolition lineup against the only team that could destroy them. It was a heavy metal concert without instruments. Number 6. Old friends, better enemies, Ric Flair vs. Roddy Piper. When the real world's champion, Ric Flair shocked the world and came to the WWF in 1991, everyone asked, who can keep up with him on the microphone? The answer was his oldest friend and greatest rival, Roddy Piper. On television, their interactions were gold, but the matches? They were often short or heavily involved with other storylines. But on the house show circuit, specifically the famous Madison Square Garden shows, Flair and Piper were given the one thing they craved: time. These weren't technical masterpieces like Steamboat versus Savage. These were brawls. These were psychology seminars. Piper and Flair knew how to work a crowd better than anyone alive. They didn't need high spots. They just needed a look, a slap, and a strut. The house show matches between these two in '91 and early '92 were a love letter to the NWA style of the '70s, hidden right in the middle of the cartoon era of the WWF. If you were there, you saw two masters painting their masterpiece, knowing they didn't have to worry about commercial breaks. Number 5, the Iron Men, the Rockers versus the Hart Foundation. We move from brawlers to technicians. If you ask Bret Hart today who his favorite opponents were, he will almost always mention the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. In the late 80s, the tag team division was stacked, but the magic between the Hart Foundation and the Rockers was something else entirely. Host: on prime-time wrestling, you might get a 10-minute match, maybe 12 if you were lucky, but on the loop, these four men were wrestling 20, 25, sometimes 30-minute marathons. They weren't officially Iron Man matches, but they felt like it. The pace was relentless. This was the precursor to the style we see today in companies like AEW or NXT. High octane, false finish after false finish. Host: on camera. The tragedy is that almost none of this exists on high-quality video. We have fan cams, blurry and shaking, capturing what might be the greatest tag team matches ever wrestled. Why is this on the list? Because it proves that the work rate era didn't start in the late 90s. It was alive and well in 1989, it just wasn't being televised. Bret and Shawn were building their chemistry here, laying the groundwork for a rivalry that would eventually define the entire decade. Number 4. The failed experiment, Hulk Hogan vs. Ric Flair. This is the big one, the Holy Grail, the match that was supposed to headline WrestleMania 8. Hulk Hogan vs. Ric Flair, the icon of the WWF versus the icon of the NWA. For years, the narrative has been Vince McMahon saved it for later, or they couldn't agree on the finish. But the truth is much darker. The truth is found in the house show results. Vince McMahon didn't save the match. He killed it. Here is the reality. When Flair arrived, they immediately booked him against Hogan on the house show loop to test the waters. They expected sold-out arenas, riots in the streets, and record-breaking numbers. They got decent numbers, and sometimes mediocre ones. The styles clashed. The chemistry wasn't instantaneous. The WWF audience, trained on monsters and giants, didn't quite know how to react to Flair's technical, cowardly heel persona against Hogan's superhero act. The matches were okay. Just okay. Vince McMahon looked at the house show returns and hit the panic button. He realized that the dream match wasn't drawing the money he projected. He lost faith in the pairing. So he scrapped the main event of WrestleMania. He pivoted. He put Flair with Savage and Hogan with Sid Justice. The rivalry of the century lived and died in places like Oakland and Dayton. By the time they finally wrestled on TV in WCW years later, the moment had passed. This is the ultimate example of the house show loop changing the course of history. If those matches in late '91 had been 5-star classics, WrestleMania 8 would have looked very, very different. Number 3. The Clash of Styles. Bret Hitman Hart versus The Undertaker. We enter the top 3 with a pairing that defined the new generation, but actually started years before. In 1992, The Undertaker was still very much a gimmick wrestler. He was slow, methodical, and impervious to pain. The prevailing wisdom was that he was an attraction, not a worker. You put him in with other monsters, not technicians. But on the house show loop in Europe and the UK, Bret Hart made it his personal mission to change that. Bret didn't want to just have a monster movie match. He wanted a wrestling match. This is a pivotal moment in wrestling history that nobody saw. Night after night, Bret convinced The Undertaker to sell, to show vulnerability, to actually wrestle. If you were lucky enough to be in those arenas, you saw the evolution of the dead man in real time. You saw him taking leg sweeps, working on the mat, and countering technical holds. These house show matches proved to Vince McMahon that The Undertaker had longevity. He wasn't just a monster for Hogan to slay, he was a franchise player. Bret Hart unlocked the potential of Mark Calloway on the untelevised circuit, proving that styles make fights. Number 2. The silent moneymaker, Kamala vs. Hulk Hogan. When we talk about Hulk Hogan's great rivals, we list Piper, Orndorff, Andre, Savage. But there's a name that often gets left off that list. A name that generated millions of dollars in ticket sales without barely saying a word on television. The Ugandan giant, Kamala. This is the definition of a house show feud. The story was simple. It didn't need complicated promos. It didn't need a contract signing on Saturday night's main event. It was the Beast versus the Hero. Hogan was terrified of the monster. The monster wanted to crush the hero. For nearly 2 years, this match headlined arenas all over North America. It was the reliable B plan. If Andre was busy or Orndorff was injured, you put Kamala in with Hogan, and you sold out the building. It wasn't a technical masterpiece, and it was spectacle. It was pure old-school heat. They did this match hundreds of times. Hogan would get beat down, Hulk up, scoop slam the giant, leg drop, go home. Everyone left happy. It's the forgotten gold mine of the 80s, a feud that kept the lights on and the checks clearing, hidden in plain sight. Number 1, the Forbidden Feud. Hulk Hogan versus Jake the Snake Roberts, and here we are, the number 1, the biggest what if in the history of the Golden Era. The feud that was canceled because it was too good. In 1986, Hulk Hogan was God. He was the ultimate babyface. Nobody cheered against Hulk. Enter Jake, the Snake Roberts, the coolest, most dangerous man in the room. He didn't scream like the others. He whispered, and he had the DDT, the most devastating move in the business. The plan was simple. Jake attacks Hogan. Hogan overcomes the Snake. Hogan wins. Standard operating procedure, they booked the match for a house show in Providence, Rhode Island, to test it out. Jake hits the DDT on Hogan, and then something happened that wasn't in the script. The crowd didn't boo. They didn't cry for Hulk. They cheered. They chanted, DDT, DDT, DDT. Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan realized something terrifying in that moment. Jake Roberts was a cool heel. He was the anti-hero before Stone Cold. Steve Austin made it popular a decade later. If they put this feud on national TV, the fans might turn on Hogan. The Red and Yellow Machine was at risk. So that night, the decision was made. The feud was killed. It was erased from the schedule. Jake was moved to a feud with Ricky Steamboat, and Hogan moved on to Paul Orndorff. We were robbed of arguably the greatest psychological war of the 80s, because the WWE wasn't ready for a villain who was more popular than the hero. It remains the ultimate hidden war. The feud that proved the house show audience was smarter and more unpredictable than The Office ever anticipated. These stories are the ghosts of the Golden Era. They are the moments that filled the gaps between the pay-per-views. Today, everything is televised. Every botch, every reaction, every second is documented in 4K resolution. The mystery is gone, but for a few decades, the wrestling world was vast and dark. If you weren't there in the arena, smelling the popcorn and the sweat, you missed it. You missed the experiments, the disasters, and the magic. The house show loop was the heartbeat of the industry. It was where the real work was done. And while the tapes may not exist, the legends do. I want to hear from you. Were you ever at a house show in the 80s or 90s? Did you see a title change that wasn't on TV? Did you see a match that nobody believes happened? Leave a comment down below. Let's document this history together before it's forgotten. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, please like this video. It really helps the channel grow against the algorithm. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the WrestleVerse for more deep dives into the stories they didn't want you to know.